morning, church. Glad to have you with us today. I just returned from spending an entire week with our senior citizens titled Jolly Seniors. We went on this bus trip down to the Creation Museum and then to the Ark Encounter. And the Ark Encounter, I'm just going to be straight up honest, it was fun. It was a great trip. The Ark, right at first, the magnitude of how large it was really created a moment of doubt in me. I just being real with you, there was that first moment of seeing really truly, because it's built to scale of what Noah and his sons built. And when I first saw it, there was that moment of no, there's no way three guys. And then just in the moment of my doubt, then God reminded me, well, look what the Egyptians and everybody else was able to do with crude instruments as well, too. And so as I walked through it, I learned so much. I didn't have every question answered, but it really, really ministered to me in a big way. And in the entire time, I was with this group that we call Jolly Seniors here, a whole busload of them. Wow, can senior citizens turn on you quick? We had so many laughs together. I roomed with an elderly man named David. I walked over the river with a man named Mark over to Cincinnati and around the entire stadium. I jogged behind Paul Boatman and his wife, Sonny. I laughed at Castelline's antics, and I got to dance with Cheryl. True story. That's a long story. But anyway, and it was just fun and laughter. And in all the moments, and I was trying to help out as much as I could. It wasn't my trip. Our leaders was leading it, but I tried to help out. You know, when they needed help up, I helped them up. When they needed help down, I helped them down. I helped them in, I helped them out. I rescued them in their peril. I pointed them in the right direction when they were lost. I answered their questions when they were confused. And for all that kindness, you know what they did to me? At a restaurant, they had the service staff come up and sing happy birthday to me because they told them it was my 70th birthday. I may never travel again. All right, real quick this morning, maybe you're familiar with it. British artists, Tim Noble and Sue Webster from London, England, have changed the entire world with their sculptors, their shadow and light sculptors. These two have walked the streets of London and gathered trash. They gathered trash out of the streets and then have done artwork, just mind-boggling artwork. And like here's one, and when you first look at it, it looks like just a whole series of trash. It looks like trash, aluminum cans. But then what they do is they apply light to it, and look what happens when they apply light to it. Now this is one of their earlier ones. Let me show you something really phenomenal. Here's number 2. It's wire and metal that they collected out of the streets, and they put this glob together, and then the next thing you know, you put a spotlight on it, and you get this in the background. Is that incredible? I mean, I was just, and what it started to do, here, I need you to hear me, it started to retrain my eye. I stopped looking for trash, and I started looking for something more meaningful behind it. Here's another one, number 3. This is wood, just wood chips and pieces and everything. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I can't even begin to see what this will do. But when you shed a light on it, it gets this shadow. And their website is filled with these things. And over again, I found that their art was causing me to retrain my eyes to look for something more meaningful. I think God does the same thing. I think there is a mindset, even among good Christian people, that there are certain people in this world we step around or we step over or we try to ignore or we don't make eye contact with because we wouldn't use the word trash, but there's something about it in our mind that we really just don't want to give them any time. And I think God would like to awaken something new in us today. We're in a series titled Awaken. We started this on Easter Sunday. It's just 4 Sundays long. And this equation has been building inside of me now. I didn't originally plan it this way, but on Easter Sunday, we talked about the awakening of Jesus from the dead. That awakening has awakened some things in me. If you really believe in the resurrection of Jesus, I mean really believe it, that he came back from the dead, and you believe that the resurrection is one day going to be yours, you don't stay dead. You are brought back to. If you really believe that, what's the outcome? And here's what I've discovered. The first week, Easter, we talked about hope. My life, regardless of the trash in my life plus the resurrection equals hope. And then that hope starts to magnify, be multiplied by joy. We talked about joy last week. And then it's multiplied even more by purpose. And that's what I want to talk about today. That you and I have a purpose in this world that God laid down before the foundations of our planet, that you and I would fulfill a purpose. Something inside of me has been awakened to this idea that I have this purpose in life. And what is the purpose? To share my story. You have the same purpose. That somewhere in your journey to Jesus, you have a story that is uniquely yours. Just like a fingerprint, there is not another story like it in this world. It is just your story, and God would love to use that. Now, what if we all took a free resource? We all have this free resource, our story, and we used it to move someone else toward God, toward Jesus. Could God use my story connected to his story and start other stories? Well, sure enough, I went looking through Scripture, and the Scriptures are full of those kind of moments. You're going to know most of these stories. The story of the woman at the well. Here's this woman. She goes to the well in the middle of the afternoon. That's not like the other women. She's avoiding them. Why? Because the other women in that culture saw her as trash. Jesus shows up in this story. And in this moment, it's so out of the ordinary from everything else going on in the Bible. First of all, you have all these walls that Jesus has to break through. She's a Samaritan, he's a Jew. Jews and Samaritans didn't talk to one another. He's a man, she's a woman. In public, no man would have spent time talking to another woman. He's a rabbi, and she's a woman with questionable morals. And no rabbi of his time would have spent time it's trash, just disregard it. Jesus breaks through all those walls to have a conversation with her. It changes her heart. It changes her life. What's her first instinct in that moment? She goes running into her community. She goes running to tell others, you should come see the man I just met. He told me all about my life. All about the trash in my life. He knew it all. And he still talked to me. And is there any chance that this man is the Messiah that we've been waiting for? Well, the whole community, they go running out to meet Jesus and to spend some time with him. Their lives are altered too in the moment. The impact is monumental. An entire community is changed. John chapter 4. They said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and now we know that this man is the Savior of the world. Do you see what just happened there? God used her story connected to his story to start other stories. Could that happen in us? It's called, the story in Scripture is called the demonic among the tombs. He is demon-possessed man. He's demon-possessed. He's got an evil spirit in him. He's living in a cemetery. That whole description of living in a cemetery is meant to be symbolic for you and I. He is swallowed up by death. He is a walking dead in this world because of all the evil he's allowed into his life. His community has totally tossed him off. They've tried to capture him. They've tried to chain him. He has unnatural strength. He has busted through chains and he has been free. And he's living in a cemetery because of this. Death has become his whole personality now. And Jesus shows up. And when Jesus shows up, Jesus casts the demon out of him and gives him a fresh start, a new outlook, a restored a restored mind, a restored body, a restored life. And Jesus is now leaving on this boat, and this man says, I want to go with you. All this time, Jesus has been building followers, he doesn't want this man to follow him, which is so odd. Really, Jesus, in your little traveling religious show, couldn't you use a strong testimony like this? Jesus says, no, that's not what I want. Jesus says, I want you to go tell someone else. Mark chapter 5, Jesus said, no, go home to your family. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. God will take this demonic story and add it to his story, and he's going to start other stories. My premise is simply this. When you truly believe in the resurrection of Jesus, truly believe it, it gives you a new purpose in life that maybe you were unaware that you had. Well, the preacher, no, this isn't about being a preacher. It's not being about a minute. It's about right where you're at. Fathers telling daughters, and mothers telling sons, and neighbors telling neighbors, and coworkers telling coworkers, and friends telling friends, you got to come see this guy I met. When Mary Magdalene at the tomb encounters a resurrected, she expected to find a dead Jesus. She encounters him alive and resurrected. What's her first instinct? Run and tell somebody else. John chapter 20, Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, I have seen the Lord. And she told them all that she had encountered. When the two men walking on the road to Emmaus encountered Jesus, at first they don't even recognize him. Their eyes are blinded. They don't have eyes that see what God wants them to see. And all of a sudden their eyes are open. They see Jesus is with them. They're so surprised, so shocked. They love the moment. But what's their first instinct when Jesus leaves? Go tell someone else. Luke chapter 24. They returned at once to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and those with them assembled together and told them, it is true, the Lord has risen. He has appeared to Simon. You know, nothing else in life really offers this kind of purpose. If you don't know why you're here on earth, if you don't know what your purpose and your value and your meaning is here on earth, then life becomes aimless and boring and confused. But when you understand what your purpose is, this is my purpose, this is why God put me together, this is what I was made to do, something significant happens inside of you. And you know you've been set aside to tell someone else, and that's what you want to do. Every one of us in this room, you haven't been asked to change the entire world, but someone in your life you've been asked to reach out to, someone in your world. Oh, maybe it's simply as a grandparent to a grandchild, maybe, or a parent to a child, maybe. But maybe it reaches out a little past that to a friend. Yeah, if we don't do this, who's going to do this? Romans chapter 10. How can people have faith in the Lord and ask him to save them if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear unless someone tells them? My whole journey with Jesus, you're seeing years of work that God has been chiseling on Ron. I've come a long way, but my story really begins with trash also. It was not a good life that God rescued me from and restored me from. And I'm not going to take you all the way back here and show you that image. I'm just telling you that this is years and years and years. If you listen, every thunderstorm that rolls over our houses is the sound of a hammer coming down and the clanging of another life being changed. And there's been times I've been on that anvil. There's times that I've been that reshaped piece of metal, and I fought God. He had to put me in fire and melt me down a little bit so that he could hammer on me some more. And this is my whole spiritual journey, and this is your journey. This is how I found the pedal tractor. I found it at a garage sale. It was in pieces, just in pieces. It was rusted. It was broken. The tires were all eaten away. You can't tell in that picture, but it was unusable, unrideable, and people were stopping and looking at it, but considered the price too high, and they stepped over it. And then I walked up on it, and I looked at that, and I looked at that, and I'm not good at doing, but every so often I just get this desire in me to restore something, and so I bought it, and this is how it looks today. Now that's a lot of work. That was a lot of sanding, and I had to have help with welding, and I had to have help with some painting, and then we put that thing back together, and there are a few new parts on it, but tires were replaced, and my grandkids can now ride that around my house. Now, I built it for them, but they bang it into things, and now they're scratching it, and that just drives me crazy. Because I worked so hard to put that thing together. I'm a restored life. There's a time I was in pieces. God can use my story. And I don't care who trashed our lives. Maybe it was circumstances of life that you got trashed by. Maybe it was a person who trashed you good. Man, they trashed you good. Or maybe it was just a series of life and losses. You live long enough, let me tell you something. In every life, there will be losses. Times when you lose a friend, time when you lose a job, times when you lose a loved one and you're standing at a great... Life is a series of losses, and that can trash you after a while. And then God comes along and says, give me all your trash and let's see what I can do with it. And when we just put our hands in the hands of God, God takes our story, he adds it to his overwhelming story, and then he uses that to start new stories. What was Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz? What was her big moment? Really, correct me if I'm wrong, but her entire impact is that she keeps pointing off to a man who can fix things. Scarecrow needs a brain. I know a guy who can do that. The Tin Man needs, I know a guy who can do that. The lion needs courage. I know a guy who can do that for you. And in her whole desire, what did she want? Just to go home. While I am here, and while God gives me breath, and while God gives me the energy, my family's going to get a whole bunch of it. I love being with them. I love being a pastor. I love being a part of Lincoln Christian Church. I love my friendships. But deep down inside of me, there is just this Dorothy desire to go home. I just want to go home. Now, I put that in his charge and his control. I'm not going to take matters into my own hand, but one day I get to go home. Why? Because I know a guy. Well, in my purpose, I want to take others with me. You know what's standing in the way of some of your friends going to heaven? You haven't told them your story yet. This is how I came to Jesus. I don't have all the answers. I'm still searching and trying to discover some answers for some things. But I do know this. Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, will one day be my resurrection, and it changes everything. Now, what do you know? God's waiting to use your story connected to his story to start another story.